Hey everyone, welcome to Spring Semester 2018. This is Professor Snyder, and I am just going to talk a little bit about the syllabus. And so you should see the syllabus on the screen there, and I'm going to highlight probably about 3 points in regard to the syllabus. And the syllabus is lengthy, so you may be thinking, how am I going to highlight just 3 points when it's so lengthy? Well, it would be, I think, a little bit too much if I was to go through all of it. And you can all read it for yourselves, and you should read it. You should be aware of all of the expectations of the course, as far as like logging on to the class, what the course requirements are, some of the tips for success, and also important are the schedule of assignments that I have towards the end of the syllabus, the last few pages. That's our schedule for the semester, so that includes due dates, etc. So I'd like to start off right now in just talking about what it means to teach a class of marriage, family, and relationships from a sociological perspective. And I define sociology in the syllabus, so I have course description here, and I talk about kind of what we're interested in regard to sociology. So it's scientific, generally it's a scientific study of society. And what does that mean? As you can see here, that refers to the micro level, talking about individuals and social groups, as well as the macro level, what we call social institutions, such as education, government, mass media. Social institutions are those things that organize our lives. So in any society, regardless of where it is in the world, regardless of the culture, there has to be some kind of way of organizing education. How are people in that society educated? How do they know how to feed themselves, how to go about producing resources to clothe themselves? All those basic things. So that relates to the economic social institution. How do they go about regulating behavior within the society? That relates to government. How do they go about passing along information from one member to another? And if it's a small village, that could be one thing. You might have a couple of hundred people in that village. Or if we're talking about a mass society where you have millions of people, how do you inform people? How do you distribute that information, disseminate that information? Well, mass media is something that organizes our lives in regard to that. So a kind of an image. So what I'm talking about here, when I refer to micro level and macro level, this is the way that society is structured. So one way of viewing that, thinking about that, is with this diagram. So here's the diagram of the social structure. And up here, these are all of the social institutions. And there are some that I have not included, but these are some of the major social institutions. The traditional social institutions are government, what I just referred to, and economy. I also refer to the economy. Education is a traditional social institution, religion, and family structure. So government, I mentioned, something about making laws. How do we kind of regulate how people behave? That's important. In the economy, we kind of figure out and decide how people are going to make a living, how they're going to obtain the resources that they need to have food, clothing, shelter. Education, how are we going to pass along knowledge to different people? How are we going to teach them how to live in the society? And religion is another traditional social institution. So within religion, we have explanations of how life began, the meaning of life, what happens after death. Also, we see a lot of guidelines for gender norms, so how males and females are supposed to behave within society. So some of that comes from religion, religious thought. And family structure. So family structure is a social institution, and this is macro level. So these are kind of big picture structures that exist within our society. These aren't things that we can, it can be difficult to kind of point to lay a finger on, because they organize our lives in very complex ways. So we can see evidence of the economy, we can see evidence of what government is, but it's hard to point to one thing, and it's really impossible to point to just one thing and say this alone is government in any given society. There are examples of governments, there are examples of different facets of the economy, such as when you're working your job, such as when you get your paycheck. And family structure, what that means is we're not talking about family interaction on a face-to-face basis. With family structure, we're talking about how in a society the society defines what is the normal family structure, what composes a family. What are the members? Who are the members in that family? Is it a matriarchal or female-dominated family structure? Or is it a patriarchal or male-dominated family structure? Is it a nuclear family structure where when a couple, romantic couple, when they come together, they go off and live on their own? That's a nuclear family structure. Whereas in an extended family, you may have, within some cultures, a couple may marry and then they may build, an extra, bedroom or an extra wing of a house attached to one of their parents' homes. And so that's an extended family. So there are many different ways of structuring families in society. And so here on the macro level, that kind of tells us how societies go about doing that, what they see as the norm. And it also affects our behavior, because we learn then that there are certain expectations for how we act in that society, what kind of family structure we're supposed to have. For instance, if you were to tell your parents, maybe in an excited way, that you're thinking about getting married and you're going to marry Bill and you're going to marry Tracy, and you're all going to come together and you're going to have, this wonderful life, and let's say you expect your parents to be happy for you. Now, maybe some parents, they might be happy for you, but in American culture, it's unusual to have a polyamorous relationship where it's 3 people within a romantic relationship. So your parents might look at you, kind of, strangely. It's like, what do you mean you're going to marry 2 people? You can't marry 2 people. So that example is related to norms of family structure, but also the norms within the government that regulate family structure. Within the government and within standard laws that we have within our society, you can't have 3 people or 4 people that go and apply for a marriage license and get married. So it's not even allowed. So that's an example of how social institutions regulate our behavior. Moving down to this level, so social groups, statuses and roles. Here we're talking about the micro level. And I'm going to switch over to another image of this diagram, the diagram of the social structure. And so this one just focuses on the 5 traditional social institutions, and they're on the macro level. And then here on the micro level, we have social groups. Social group is 2 or more people who have regular interaction and often a shared identity. So these are people who have face-to-face contact with one another. And then I give a few examples. So this example, Elaine's family, that relates to the clip that you have on Moodle, and there's a clip from the film The Graduate, and Elaine is one of the characters in The Graduate. So hopefully after you take a look at the PowerPoints from Chapter 1, and then look at that clip, view the clip from The Graduate, then this will make a little sense. So Elaine being one of the characters, she has we see interactions with her family, and we see that she can have close friends. She's a college student. She has other students who are in the class. So those are examples of social groups. Other social groups might be coworkers at your job, or parishioners at your religious institution, whatever kind of religious organization that you attend. So continuing here on the micro level, we are interested in our how we're affected individually. So sociologists then examine the statuses that individuals can hold, and then the roles that they have. A status is just a position. It's a position that you can have in society. And you all have multiple statuses. I have multiple statuses. So you can be a son, daughter, or fiance, a student. You can be a soccer coach. You can be a Bible study leader. You can be a worker, a clerk at a department store. So there are all sorts of statuses that you can hold. Each one of those statuses has expectations for behaviors, and those are your roles. So your roles are the behaviors that you're expected to follow for each status. So one of the difficulties, one of the challenges that we can encounter when we're taking a class and taking, multiple college courses, is that it's hard to decide how much time do we spend for each course on in each class when you're trying to keep up with your reading, you're studying for a test, you're working on a research paper. And then at the same time, so that relates to your status as a student, and then the behaviors, the expectations for your behavior. Then you also might be a parent. Maybe you're a father or a mother, so you have obligations to your family, to your children. You may be a friend to somebody. A friend is a status, and then you have behavioral expectations then as a friend. So you have friends that may expect a certain amount of contact from you on, any given day. And if you don't follow up with that, if you don't talk to these friends, on, if it's every day, or if it's, at least several times a week, then, what happens? They might be, a little annoyed with you, or they think that you're not interested in being friends anymore. They send out a text to you and you don't respond. And maybe you're not responding because of, the pressures that you feel coming from being a parent, or the pressures that you feel in being a student. So that's the kind of the juggling that you have to kind of figure out. And that's why I wanted to kind of post that assignment on which I see that you're already starting to work on Moodle. The assignment where you talk about, it's class chat, where you talk about challenges that you've experienced in school. So I hope that you use that to kind of give each other advice about the challenges you've experienced, maybe talking about how you resolved it, how you're working to resolve it, or maybe you read someone else's and you think, well, I have an idea about that. So I hope that it's kind of a source of positive information that you can share with one another. So this is all a part of the sociological perspective. We're interested in how society affects us. We're interested in the norms or the guidelines that we receive from society, how our values are, what we see as desirable or important to us, how those guide our behavior, and all of those things come from this what we call a society that is much larger than what we are individually. So we're just conforming. We're conforming to what society expects from us. Even when we think we're being very much an individual, we are conforming to society. So I'm going to stop here and continue with the syllabus in another post.